Alright, so welcome everyone, and in this module we would like to talk about the simulation of the thick smoke. Let me just gonna play the video for you, and here you can see that there's quite a thick smoke being getting simulated, and we just made that thing inside the Maya. So we're also going to learn in this module how to construct the simple setup for simulating the thick smoke effect. And you can see here in this case that it has got less dissipation values, so as a reason it's been getting stayed inside a scene for a longer period of time, and the speed, or you could say the rising of the smoke, is supported by the buoyancy attribute of the fluids. So essentially we would be covering the aspects of the density, velocity, turbulence, and the construction of the surface emitter with respect to the external field that would going to provide the directionality to the smoke. So in this module we would be taking care of all these aspects of the fluid emitter and the container. And following animation there is a lot of swing inside the smoke, which is adding a lot of essence or weightage to the behavior of the thick smoke. So let's begin first with the construction of the surface emitter and then followed by the fluid container. Alright, so let me just gonna close that video and we're going to get started with our process. So to begin with the surface type of emitter, we need to have a polygon geometry, and in this case I'm using the animatable object. So it would just be a kind of a texture deformer which will going to animate the polygon object, and that's fairly simple to set up. So we're going to begin with a simple cube, and I'm just going to scale that up a little bit. So here it is, very simple, straightforward process. Now we like to add some few smooth in it. I think 3 is pretty much fine. Get rid of the history. Now you can go inside the modeling menu. There's something here is called as a deform. You can pick up the texture, alright, and this being a great thing. In this case, what will happen, the polygon geometry is driven by the texture values which we're going to provide. And if you're going to go inside the outliner, you can see there is a texture deformer handle. Control A to get the further attributes. So inside the texture deformer node, we have the provision to add the texture over here. So click it over here, and now you are completely feel free to go ahead with the choice of your texture. Preferably the choice should be the grayscale textures, because it's based upon the pixel value. So more you have a contrast, the better it will going to deform the geometry. So I would like to begin first with a fairly simple setup, that is under the 2D textures, and we like to go with the noise, so which is you can see very effective in that case. And the moment you play around with the time, you can see that the object is also being getting animated. So that's fairly enough, and I would like to begin with the amplitude 2. Let us say which noise type is also we're going to use. I would like to begin with Berlin noise. That's a little bit more better. And you can see that if we have more contrast, then we can you can see there is a lot of changes inside the shapes, but that's quite a high value. Like to go with 2.5 something, and the frequency ratio, let's say 2.5. With the depth maps, leave that thing to default, or we could go with 4. Then we have a frequency, let us say 2 should be good. And now if we like to play the time, you can see that there's a lot of variations inside the object. So the more we have the variations, the better the flow of the smoke will going to become. Otherwise, if there's quite a fairly simple static object, there won't be you're not going to find any subtlety inside the behavior of the smoke. So from the aesthetical point of view, or even from the realistic side, we also do have a lot of variations, or some, you can say, because the smoke cannot be consistent. The material keeps on burning, the dye rate keeps on changing. If we have an object is consistently being getting burnt away, so obviously there will going to be some changes. So that could be possible only if you have the such kind of the geometry that just keeps on changing. So that's why I avoid the inclusions of the regular fluid emitter, because no doubt we could able to achieve a very nice effect with that also, but this kind of setup is going to add some more richness to the behavior of the smoke. So now we have the amplitude 2 ratio is, we can say, 0.5. Okay, if you're gonna smooth out you can see the change over here in the sample area, you can see. So with that, you're going to have some smooth kind of an effect, which is obviously I'm not looking forward. So the ratio is required to be quite high. So 0.75 would also going to be best. And in that case, the frequency cannot be, very high. I would like to go with, small values, and the time is, I think so, everything is nice. So we can, animate this thing. You can also position and place that up. Plus, secondly, we haven't, increased the strength. Let's say we like to go with 2.5. So you can see that it has, provided some more, can say contrast inside this. And if you like to, balance the effect, you may use the offset with the negative values. But in this case, I don't, want this kind of thing. So I guess a value of 1, or let's say offset let to 0, or maximum let's say 1.5 should be fair enough. We don't need to have, lots of, you can say, the contrast or compression of the, I think so. Still it's not looking that much good. I think 1 will going to be perfect. Yes, that's absolutely good. So I can, rotate that thing and put that thing over here. Don't worry about the sections which is coming to the down, because the fluid container will going to stay upon the grid. So those things which are, outside the box will not going to emit the fluid. And with that, we are almost done with the process. So we could go inside the texture and can put some keys over here. So let's say I'd like to put a key over here, set key, and let's say this animation is going to be for 150 frames. So for the last frame, we'd like to give it a value of, let's say, 2, and set key. So now you can see that this object is being getting, changed for every frame, and that's also quite nice. Plus this is a bit slow because we are actually having a real-time 24 fps, so it's not a problem. And we also could do one more thing, that you can change the type of the graph. You could give it, slow into the, you can say, normal, and so we can also give it a linear graph. So in that case, the motion will going to be, consistent, and that is, I think so, quite good. So I would like to prefer with this one. And if you do have a problem regarding the display, we can go with the, soft edges, not a problem. Now if we can play that thing, this is absolutely great. So now our process is, almost, completed, and we don't need to have any, we need to add any other element inside this. This is quite okay. Now it's time to add the fluid container. So let's do one thing. Let's take a break over here. I'm going to pause it, and then in the next clip we'd like to begin with the process of, adding the fluid container.